Today, I'm excited for you to meet the financial tortoise himself, Tae Kim. While most of my guests are financial service providers with a podcast, Tae is a YouTuber with nearly 300,000 subscribers. He produces weekly financial content to help you achieve wealth slowly and steadily. My favorite videos on his channel include how to waste less money, minimalism, being practical instead of flashy, and making small incremental moves that will pay big dividends in the future, figuratively and literally. Tae, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Virginia.
Of course, I appreciate you being here all the way from across the world visiting. We're going to get into that and where you are and why you're there. But first, I want to hear your definition of abundance.
Yeah, abundance. I mean, that's such a great word. I think abundance for me has a lot to do with, like, I talk about on my platform a lot about this idea of like being content, having enough. Jack Bogle, he's the founder of Vanguard. He essentially, wrote a book about, having enough. So for me, abundance is really just being content with enough, defining like what is important to us and prioritizing that, and then being content with having reached that. I think a lot of people, and myself included, got caught into this kind of wheel of always wanting more, always wanting the next thing instead of being able to find contentness and satisfaction in the today and the now.
Yeah. So on that note, talk to me a little bit about the Financial Tortoise, right? Your brand. It's very apparent from the name. And of course, you say it on your site, the tortoise wins in the story of the tortoise and the hare because he was slow and steady. And that is, a very complete description of you. And I love that so much. So talk to us about how you defined enough, how you became okay with being slow and steady, acquiring enough, and what that process looked like for you.
Yeah, so the whole channel is really based upon the timeless fable of tortoise and the hare. The hare is fast, but then is always trying to squeeze out his fastness, his speed, and then he's not really, taking things in a slow and steady pace. Whereas tortoise is kind of the opposite, and then is content with being slow and steady, one step in front of the other, and just making progress. So I kind of landed on that name for the channel, and then I guess for the whole brand, just because I really empathize with the whole idea of slow and steady. Because I think early in my career, who doesn't want fast, right? Fast, instant results. Like I want to get rich quickly. I want to get buff quickly. I want to have, strong relationships quickly. We all want that. And then I think throughout life, I realized that fast doesn't really last. There's a lot of downside to fast, such as, the fables, the timeless fable, tortoise and the hare always talks about. You get used to taking shortcuts, and you're not developing the muscle of patience, and things just don't last. So that's where I kind of landed on, this story that we all heard growing up, but then it really didn't click for me later in life after having made all the mistakes of trying to go fast. So thus, when it came to wealth building, there's a lot of discussions regarding let's get rich quickly, buy low, sell high. However, I didn't see a lot of discussion regarding the, people who are truly wealthy, who have lasting, sustainable wealth, really built it over time, slow and steady. So I really wanted to highlight that aspect. And, a lot of it is boring. Mm-hmm. So it's boring topics, but I do wanted to highlight that aspect. And thus today, I run a YouTube channel called Financial Tortoise, and the whole mantra behind it is slow and steady wins the race. And that we don't have to try to rush to build wealth. That if we take our time, focus on the fundamentals, then, that is a sure way to build wealth. It's not sexy. It's not fast. However, at the end, it's a proven way you can build wealth.
Absolutely. So share with us a little bit about your path from back then. I know you were a veteran. I remember you probably, I don't know if it was 10 years ago. It seems like it was 10 years ago. You were on Pete's show, Do You Even Blog? And I think he was helping you with some blog content or something like that at the time. And, that was back when I was working corporate. So I'm like driving in my car, listening to these people doing the thing that I want to do. Yeah. And of course, I didn't know this would take me to podcast production, but still, I was like very interested in this space. So share with us, your journey toward creating Financial Tortoise from, all the way back, and maybe some of the mistakes that you made.
Yeah. So I might have been in a similar shoe when, I came on that podcast. So I was a veteran. So I joined the Army right after college. I served for 6 years. But after that, I entered the corporate world after I got my MBA. So after my time in service, I got my MBA, and I was a finance director for about 10 years. So did the very boring, finance directors in any company is doing the exact same thing at any time, where, Excel gurus, we run projections, expense projections, revenue projections. We sit in board meetings and talk about our quarterly targets, how our actuals are against our, forecast. So that was kind of like my pathway for 10 years. And that was what I wanted to do. Coming out of the military, I wanted to work in the corporate world. And I saw success as moving up the corporate ladder. And my ultimate desire and goal was that I wanted to be a CFO in a large organization. And I remember this one time I was at a board meeting, and the way we sit down is like, you can, in the corporate world, everyone's, sitting in a pecking order. So then my CFO is sitting in one next to me, and she's closer to the board members, and I'm sitting right next to her. And then I'm just going over the slides with her saying, hey, okay, these are the key numbers you want to highlight. And it kind of dawned on me while I was sitting there that if I just worked really hard for the next 10 years, I would just move one seat over, and then I will essentially be, instead of preparing the slides, now I'm presenting the slides. But essentially, I'm doing the same thing. And that's what I was like, oh, wow, like, is that what I want? And I think when I could project out exactly where I could be in 10 years, it, in a way, kind of scared me that like, oh, is that really what I want? And then, you're making decent money, but at the same time, I'm still essentially, my growth pathway is still the same. I'm not learning anything new. I mean, I'm learning a little bit more, but I'm not learning anything dramatically new. And I think just the idea that I knew exactly where I was going to go was terrifying in itself. And this is where I think like, I got exposed to kind of like yourself, listening to different podcasts. Like I was listening to like Pete's podcast, Do You Even Blog? And then hearing stories about people are like, what, you make money doing that? Like, how is that even possible? Right? Like this just blows your mind. You're like when someone's saying, oh, like I have a blog and I make money out of blog. And I'm like, right. I don't understand, because I'm so used to you come out of school with a technical skill and then you move up the corporate ladder and that's success. But end of the day, I mean, your experience as well, like, you're always working for someone. So you don't have the complete freedom. And then to your question regarding abundance earlier, an element of, I think, something that I was really craving was freedom. And at one phase in my life, I really wanted the title of the CFO. But then after I had kids, after I became a father, and then I wanted to become a better husband, I realized my definition of what I wanted changed. And then I wanted freedom more than I wanted that title. And then that's where I think I was feeling tension, because there was this conflict between where I was and then now where I wanted to go. Yeah, so that's where it kind of dawned on me at the time. I was like, okay, like, I'm not sure if this is the direction I want to go for the next 10 years. Like, I don't want to just move a seat over and do the exact same thing. So when I started listening to these business podcasts that were talking about people doing these crazy things and making money, I think I gave myself the permission to be like, okay, like, is that something I want to explore? And I went to this conference, and this conference, we met a couple of years later, but it was FinCon. I went to my first one 5 years ago by myself when I was still working my corporate job. And I remember sitting in some of these sessions where someone's talking about how I grew my YouTube channel from 0 to 30,000 in 6 months. And then I remember like thinking like, but that's a job? Like this person's making money out of that? Like, how is that even possible? Like my kids watch YouTube, right? Like I came from such a corporate, like, kind of a like block shaped career to like all these kind of, it felt to me at the time like kind of loosey-goosey, but at the same time, people were making headways and making impact and making a business and making a lifestyle business out of that. So I think that allowed me to kind of start exploring, can I do that? Is that possible for me? So yeah, I mean, I think that's when like really I started to start talking to my wife about like, hey, I learned these YouTubers are making money and they have this freedom and they have a job. Maybe I can do it too. I mean, I think that's where it kind of started. Idea to started percolating. Yeah.
Have you ever pictured yourself hosting your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we'd like to do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping independent financial service professionals launch and grow their podcasts since 2019. I coach you through branding, establishing structure and workflow, strategy, and recording your episodes. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Elevate your brand's visibility, become more approachable, and attract potential clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So, okay, for one, did she just look at you like, you're crazy, you better keep that job? And then my second question is, was it always, I'm going to make content and monetize that content? Or were you a little on the fence for a little while about, well, should I try to like be coaching people or should I try to make some products around this idea versus content? Like, how will I monetize?
Yeah, it's a great question. So to be honest, like at first I had no idea. Like I was like, I just know people are making money online, not in a corporate traditional sense. They're not working at a major corporation. They're like independent and doing something online. And then that I think was like, that's what kind of opened the can. So to your question regarding my wife, I mean, she was essentially like, if the finances are not impacted and you can make it work, do whatever you want. I don't know, like if it,
Okay.
Yeah. So she was very supportive and like, as long as you feel like you can try this, but then at the same time, like if we can still manage things financially. So one of the big things we did, my wife and I, was, and the reason why I have a personal finance YouTube channel was we went through a personal finance transformation journey as well. So when we got married, we had $105,000 in student debt. And we went through a Dave Ramsey course. We essentially changed our whole personal finance habit, learned to be frugal because we didn't know how to be frugal, paid down our student debt in about 3.5 years. And then kind of went on this whole, like, maybe we can save and like be financially independent early. So we went through that whole like kind of revamping our personal finances. So by the time we got to this juncture, we were very thankfully like in great careers with good income, saving a lot of our good chunk of our income. So I think one of the things that we were able to kind of map out was, okay, like, let's save up enough cash so that, let's kind of map out a timeline. Let me try this. If it doesn't work out, what's my runway? So we saved up about 2 years worth of cash. And then my wife essentially said, like, or we kind of came to agreement, like, if I can't make something work within 2 years, then I'll go get a contract job or I'll go back to my day job. It's okay. So we were thankfully in a pretty good financial position where I could kind of take this risk. To your other question regarding like what I wanted to focus on, to be honest, like when I just knew I wanted to try something online. So because I was working with Pete, Do You Even Blog at the time, he really helped me to just kind of like brainstorm like what's even possible. I started with the blog, and then because like that's what I think what I was exposed to at the time. And that's where I kind of got my first taste of actually like making I think it was an Amazon affiliate income, which was like $1.37. And I just remember like, oh my gosh, this is like the greatest thing ever. Like I just made money online, like with the commission. I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. So I think that kind of like sparked like, I want to try to crack this code to see how it works. How I landed on YouTube was, I think as I learned more and more about creating like blog posts, learning about just how a website worked, how affiliates worked, how ads worked, I think I kind of looked at, there's a, like making money online, there's a wide range, right? Of, especially even with the content. You got the YouTube, you got the written content, you got the short form content, you got Instagram, you got Twitter. So all these different platforms that you can be kind of confused at where to start. And I think the reason I kind of landed at YouTube, and right now, I don't even do shorts. I just do long form YouTube. All my videos are 10 to 15 minutes. And the reason is because I saw a lot of personal finance written content. So for one, to get into personal finance, you're a type of person that likes numbers, right? Like to even talk about like personal finance, you like talking about backdoor Roth IRA, like you have a certain personality. You like, like numbers, you like finding these little hacks. And I think what I noticed was at the time, there wasn't as many video content. So I saw a lot of written content. So then if I try to, rank for something on SEO, I knew it was hard for me to compete against so many smart people in the personal finance space because, their written contents are comprehensive, detailed, and you have, people who are like economists, people who can talk about the stock market. And you also have these big channels like Forbes or like Wall Street Journal that are writing personal finance content. And it's really hard to rank on the first page of Google, almost impossible. You have to go like super long tail. But what I noticed was that when you just click one tab over to the video, it's actually, there wasn't as much competition. If I did a SEO about a backdoor Roth IRA, like the one video that ranked high was some random video a guy made 4 years ago, and it was never updated. So that's where I think I was kind of like, okay, like, I don't think I could compete on maybe written context, but maybe I'm okay putting my face on video. And that's one of the things too, is like a lot of bloggers are hesitant about putting their face on video. And I was like, if I can get over this hump of just putting my face, in front of a camera, it can't be that much different from like, running slides in a board meeting. That's what I thought initially. So that was how I landed on YouTube, was like, okay, I think I could, this is a less, like, I feel like I can compete in this arena if I kind of focus and dedicate my time to it. So that's how I kind of landed on the long form YouTube videos. And interestingly, like that's how I was able to kind of make my initial headways on YouTube, was I took these very super boring topics that was well searched for in the text context. So like, I will give an example, like a backdoor Roth IRA. Like that's who does that, right? Who looks for that back there? So you're a super nerd if you're looking for backdoor Roth IRA.
Dorks.
super
dorks
dorks.
like us.
Yeah, but there are people looking for it, and I knew there were a lot of really great blog posts about it. But so then I was like, I'm gonna make the best video on this, and then literally do like step by step on how to do a backdoor Roth IRA, and that's how it was to kind of get like my, I guess, beachhead into the YouTube algorithm, and then from there I was able to find some other keywords that I was able to compete on. So like another one was I did videos about like my favorite index funds. And again, these are super boring. I'm talking about expense ratios. I'm talking about fund composition. And then most of the stuff you can find when you go to their website. And all I'm doing is kind of regurgitating a lot of it, but just with my own little twist, try to add a little bit of dry humor to it. But then those were what allowed me to like rank on YouTube. And I think that's what that gave me the momentum to see that, oh, there is a pathway in long form YouTube with these very boring content that some people don't want to read it. They want to watch it. So that's how I kind of landed on YouTube. To your question regarding when I thought about content, how I landed on the platform that I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you hit on a few really important points that I want any business owner thinking about creating content to hear. For one, you kind of recognized right away, hey, like I present in board meetings all the time. How is that any different than having my face on camera? I can get over this hump and get comfortable with it so that I can create this niche for myself. And then the other piece is that everyone thinks they don't know what to say on their channel. And you hit on the fact that, hey, this content has already been created. It's super easy to go to Fidelity and pull like the top, dividend stocks right now, right? And just regurgitate the same information, but put your own twist on it. It doesn't have to be something that you created of your own mind power that no one else has ever done, right? It can be just your spin on existing content. So I think that's super, super important. What I would love to hear from you next is that you strike me as a realist, a very practical, realistic person. You can run spreadsheets, you've got the numbers, I'm sure your life is very systematic in many ways. And so how do you balance this maybe woo-woo concept of abundance with this very realistic personality? How can someone float in between those two?
Yeah, I guess that comes down to like balancing abundance with pragmatism. I guess, in my mind, I guess it kind of goes together because the definition of abundance, I think, is different for each person. However, for me, the definition of abundance is kind of like knowing my enough and finding contentness. So for me, it really goes well together that if I can define what is enough for me, that gives me a sense of abundance. And then I guess kind of like tying it to the YouTube channel, like I have, strong aspirations I was kind of joking around with my wife when I first started. I was like, I don't know this space, so it's hard for me to kind of know what the top cap like income potential is. But at the same time, I think because my definition of like my priority was freedom. So then like I was making good income as a corporate finance director, but I wasn't free. I had, if I wanted to go on leave, I had to ask for permission. If I wanted to try something different, I had to ask for permission and get those approved. And for me, like my priority was like, at this stage of my life, I really want to have the freedom to be able to do what I want to, whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do. So then I think the joke with my wife was like, I think if I can bring in just a few thousand a month, I can still call myself an entrepreneur. And then like I made success. That's my abundance. Like I am successful. Like, just don't ask me how much I make. I am an online entrepreneur. So then for me, like I find contentness and satisfaction in that alone. So then that was kind of like my goal, I
Yeah.
think, when I first started this YouTube channel too, was I saw it as a medium to develop a lifestyle business that I can kind of work anywhere from, and then to be able to have ultimate control over. And I think, yeah, to your point regarding like abundance, I think is very important. And for me, it's, the idea of enough, that like, what is your enough? Because that's the other part too, is like I also know a lot of people within the space now who don't have a good definition of enough. And they're just constantly seeking more and more and more. And you become unbalanced in your life. So, and that's not healthy. So for me, like that's a very important component, balance, knowing my enough. So I guess to your question, like it really kind of goes hand to hand.
Awesome. Well, thank you for helping marry those ideas together, because I know for so many people, they're like, well, I'm a realist. So how can I dream of this idea of abundance, like that, this like undefined freedom and joy? Like, let's look at like the realistic, piece of life of like, how many hours in the day do you have and things like that. And they try to math it down.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah,
thank you.
But I think that's a really good point. I mean, like, I think that's the other part too, from a stretch perspective. I think I had to when I first embarked on this YouTube journey, I think that's where I had to really give myself the permission to, I guess, dream of what's possible. And because I didn't know if this was possible, because the only thing I knew was if I stayed on this pathway, my income would increase this much and I could get this position. And that was my definition of success. So I think, I guess like from a matic perspective, we can limit ourselves, but I think it's very important at times to give ourselves permission to dream and then also leverage the strength of our pragmatism. Because this is where I think I was telling you about how, because I think we were pragmatic, we're like, we're not going to do this until we're confident, like we have enough cash that whatever happens, we're still protected. And I also never completely like close the door with my prior employer. Like I didn't walk out, be like, screw this, like I'm never coming back. It was more like, hey, I'm just taking a transition, like a pause in, my life. So then leaving a door, with my previous employers that if I want to come back, I can come back. But I wanted to try this. So I think it's finding that right balance between, just because you're pragmatic and like a rational person, like leverage that as your strength, but then don't limit yourself to be able to dream what is possible.
Oh, that's so helpful. And, that brings up the concept of like, don't burn your bridges, even though you are transitioning your life. There's lots of golden nuggets in there. So I know that there's no possible way you could have started this YouTube channel and become where you are now without some challenges. So tell me about something that didn't work out, maybe like a rough spot that you've had. And how long did it take you to resolve that? Like, how did you figure out the solution?
I think some rough patches within the journey. Yeah, there were definitely a lot. So I think when I first started, I think the first year really was just kind of learning how the whole process worked. So I committed myself to saying, I'm going to make 2 videos a week, rain or shine, as long as possible until I could see some progress, because that's what I heard kind of from everybody saying, hey, this is going to take time. A lot of it is learning the craft. Kind of to your, earlier statement regarding finding confidence in your previous skills, such as, like I presented a lot of boards. So I thought I could speak to a camera. However, I realized very early on that talking to a camera and talking my board slides were very different skill sets. So I had to learn how to, in a way, act in front of a camera, which I've never done before. Talking, like looking at the lens, talking to the camera, sounding natural. That I think was like a skill set I had to develop. I had to learn how cameras worked, lightings worked, audios worked. Like those were kind of things that I really had to kind of overcome in a rough patch. So I think that first year, I would say was the hardest because you're pushing a rock up a hill, not knowing if there's going to be a payoff at the end. So that first year, I mean, I was essentially making no money. I was dedicating, pretty much all my time on scripting, filming, and editing videos myself so I could kind of learn the whole process. And it wasn't until about, I would say 100, 150 videos in where I started to see some traction. So I think the hardest was really just kind of, I call it the grind, surviving that grind, where you're believing in yourself and you're honing your skill of communication and just topics, understanding what topics that people like, how to speak confidently in front of a camera, how to edit it in a way it's not distracting, but it is supporting what you're saying. And then I think more you make the videos, there's a difference in the way you speak to a camera on YouTube channel versus how you present, let's say, in front of a larger audience. So those were skills that I had to really I'm going to get better at this. And it was funny, like the first couple times, you're constantly learning new things. So I remember when I would edit this video and I'd be like, oh, this is the best video ever. This is my 20th one. I'm like, this is so great. And then I watch it now and I want to throw up. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with the lighting, the audio, the angle, even just basic stuff I didn't know about framing yourself in front of a camera. So then there's the rule of thirds where, you have to position yourself in the center third. You have to position your head in the top third. So I didn't know those rules. So I just okay, I think the camera is on my face, but I didn't realize I had this huge foot of a gap between me and top of the frame. So my head was at the bottom of the frame. I was cut off here. And I filmed the whole video thinking oh, this is great, And I look at it now, I'm like, what was I thinking? But those are things I think I had to really just kind of grind through. And I think that's where, when I talk to a lot of other creators that are just getting started, I think that's what I see as a challenge is even if you don't see the results, because within YouTube, I think it's slightly different maybe with other shorter form content. With YouTube content, it takes a long time, I think, for people to see you, to trust you, and then simultaneously, your content is getting better and better. So then people see and recognize that more and more. So I think that was probably the hardest was that first year was okay, I'm uploading videos twice a week, but yet I'm not seeing any upticks in views. Am I still in the right pathway? Okay, let me do this again, and let me do this again, and let me do this again. And you're okay. You have to be okay doing that 100 times, because you might not think that you're getting results, but then all those skills that you're developing, it's compounding. And then a lot of times that curve in views kind of jump at the 101st video, but it's not because of that 101st video. If you didn't have that first 100 videos, you wouldn't have that 101st video that, kind of took you and allowed you to have a, be a full-time creator or be a creator that is, be able to make a sustainable living. So yeah, I would say that is really, for me, that was the hardest part was and I was the whole time I was kind of I think a part of me was saying, I'm going to dedicate myself fully to this. But at the same time, I had one foot still kind of cracking the door open for my previous career. I was okay, if this doesn't work out, hopefully no one finds my video that I tried this. It's embarrassing that it didn't work out. So I can always go back to my previous career. But yeah, I think part of it is just really just believing in yourself that you can do this.
Yeah. Over that sustained period of time, uploading 100 videos and having, 0 to 10 viewers on each one or, hopefully more, but just feeling am I doing anything? Is anybody listening? Is there a point to this or whatever? But yeah, it's very similar in podcasting minus the visual element. So it's,
right.
Nobody's listening to me until you know, usually I say at least 70 episodes or further. So you're saying 100, 150. And I think that number grows and changes. It's very similar to like the marketing kind of mantra that we've all learned. Like it was 7 touches, then somebody said it was 21 touches. And, it's increasing the number of times that someone has to hear from you, see you, read your content, view you, whatever it is, before they actually are in and bought into either your message or your products or whatever it is that you're trying to help with. So, yeah, just to keep going. Were there any resources? I know that you're practically a full-time reader at this point, and you share a lot about books on your YouTube channel, which I love because there are so many books I want to read. I don't feel like I have the time to do them all, but you read them for me and then you tell me what I need to know. So thank you. But were there any resources that helped you sustain that belief in yourself and continue to build and continue to, just focus and keep going when you didn't feel like you were getting any traction?
Yeah, so there was this book that I read. I think the author's name is Dory Clark, and she talked about the title of the book is The Long Game, and she talked about how she's a content creator herself, more of an author, and talking about how a lot of these pathways that we take, especially I think in the kind of the new internet online business space, it takes longer than we like, right? You watch an Instagram reel and then someone's making X amount of dollars a month and you're like, why can't I do that? But you're only 3 months in. So I think that book really helped me to just kind of reframe constantly. I was telling myself that it's going to take a while. Why am I expecting to be a good content creator overnight when I have never done this before? So that was really, really helpful. And I think the other things that really helped me was, to be honest, like just watching other content creators. And then I think when I saw them, I was like, part of me was like jealous, but the other part of me was like, if they could do it, like I can do it too. Like, why can't I? I think that was what I was constantly telling myself. I just need to put in the time in order to hone my craft. And it takes time. And I think that's the other part that I'm realizing now, after having done this now full time for 3 years, is that if you're willing to dedicate yourself to this craft and then be able to do it for years on, not many people are willing to dedicate that amount of energy and time. Because there's no school for content creators. You don't go to a bachelor's degree on how to make YouTube videos. It's something that individuals are kind of doing it on their own to learn how to use a camera, learn how to edit videos, learn how to craft out scripts. So if this is a pathway you want to go and you are willing to dedicate yourself time to it, you're creating a distinctive advantage that is really hard for others to break through. So I think that's the other thing that I would try to, encourage myself and encourage others to say, like, there is a pathway to have a sustainable online business through the content creation system, and know that it's going to take time. It's going to be hard. But then once you can kind of get through to the other end and you develop these skills of recording and editing and just being able to create content that is useful for people, that is a competitive advantage that other people can't compete with anymore. Because not many people are willing to go through that pathway.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even in this podcast production space, I've seen, of course, the creator who desires to become a podcaster, right? I've seen them come and go. I've seen some stick around. That's refreshing. But even in this producer role, I've seen people, start a business, I guess their passion wanes or maybe they feel that it's not working and they exit. And I've seen various like sales and acquisitions and just lots of movement in the space. And that's, I think, just testimony to how new this content creation industry is, there's going to continue to be a lot of movement and a lot of trial and error and a lot of success if you can stick to it for a long period of time. So before we go, I would love to hear a little bit about your summer trip that you've been on and just share with us, kind of the fruits of your labor, right? It's just that freedom that you originally desired is actually happening for you. It's like very tangible for you right now. That's why you're across the world recording with me, not necessarily in your home studio. So we would love to just hear about that a little bit before you go, please.
Yeah. So as we're speaking, I'm actually recording this from a very remote village in West Germany. So my wife and my two kids, they're 8 and 10. We've been on this slow travel across Europe. This is our second month and we have about a month remaining. But we visited, at this point, I think six countries. We were in UK. We started out in UK and we've been driving just across, starting in West France and Bordeaux, just the French Riviera, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, and then we're going to Belgium next. So yeah, it's been something that's been on our bucket list for my wife and I, since we got married. And we've heard about people doing this kind of slow travel, but we're like, that's, like when we're retired, like, we'll, think about that. That's not possible, for our life stage before. So yeah, thankfully, because I started a YouTube channel, which is very location independent business, I've been able to still run the business and be able to travel across Europe with the family. Of course, I still need good internet. So, that's one of the things that I have to constantly kind of juggle. But yeah, it's been fantastic. It's been, the challenge has been trying to, we one of the hypotheses we had was like, will we drive each other crazy, spending 24/7 with each other? Because the kids, we're homeschooling them too while we're on the road. So far we haven't gone berserk yet, and then we have some plans to actually continue our slow travel next year. We're thinking about going to Asia next year to do some extended travels over there. But it's been pretty epic, yeah. And I think that's one of the for people who are thinking about, having their own online business or content business, I think, again, like I think I shared earlier, I came from a very traditional kind of a corporate background. And before that, I had a very traditional, I was in the military for 6 years. So I did my ROTC when I was in college. I was commissioned into the Army, and then I served for 6 years. So then the world that I knew before was a very structured kind of like hierarchy based where, hey, you work hard, you get a good job, you get a pension, you get a 401k, you move up, you could one day have the corner office. And that was kind of the world that I knew. And then very interesting for me to kind of find myself in this position where I don't have a title. My education from my previous life, my MBA, really doesn't matter. Like, at this point, it's, we're kind of living in a crazy times right now where you could film videos in your living room, post it online, and then be able to generate income from that content. And then right now you can, like for me, like I can do that while I just filmed some videos when we're in Italy. And it still kind of boggles my mind that like, is this even possible? And like my whole, like I have contractors that I'm working with, like editors and like agencies, and then I'm able to communicate with all of them via, online. So they don't really care where I am as long as, I can communicate with them. So it's crazy times right now. So I think people, if they are thinking about starting a content business, there is no better time. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that you're in it deep, like right in the middle of it. It's very tangible for you. And you're still like, struggling with this like almost disbelief. Like, is this real? Yeah. Is this really happening? Right.
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting because the assumption would be that you would struggle with a belief around, is this possible before you created it? Right. But to be living in it and thinking, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's so neat. So tell us where we can find you, follow you, if there is anything that we just absolutely should do, like maybe get your newsletter. Tell us about those things.
Yeah. So my YouTube channel is Tae Kim Financial Tortoise. So if you want to see some of my content, you can find me on YouTube. I have a newsletter that you can join if you just go to financialtortoise.com. Most of the stuff I talk about is personal finance related, but if you are, have any questions about content creation, I'm always happy to talk to current content creators and future content creators. So you can email me at tay@financialtortoise.com. And if you want to see my more the personal side, what we've been seeing in Europe, you can see my Instagram, Financial Tortoise on Instagram. And you see my hair progressively getting longer every single week because I can't find a good barber here, or I'm having a hard time finding a good hair person. So if that's one of the funny things on my YouTube channel. It's funny how I make videos about investing, and then the number one thing I get the most comment about is my hair.
Oh my gosh. Well, I did notice it was a little bit longer, but I just figure, my hair's growing too. That's hilarious. I love when your followers can kind of pick out like that personal side of you. And yes, you are this professional YouTube content creator, but we're all identifying with the fact of I can't find a good haircut place. Or really, let's just be honest, like finding a haircut place while you're on vacation with your family, no matter how long the vacation is, that's just not a priority. So
yeah, right. And I think that's kind of telling about the content creation world, is that I think people are craving, even if it's, I talk about the most boringest thing ever. Like I talk about expense ratios and portfolio designs. Yet, I think for me, it was fascinating that people wanted to hear from another person instead of Fidelity website. And I think that's where I started to see the power of individual content that, hey, like Vanguard has a better information about their fund. Why are they watching me? Is because all of us, I think we desire connection. And I think there's an element of trust in that. And I try to, I think as I've learned, I realized I try to drop in a little bit of like dry humor in my YouTube channel, even because it's the most boringest thing. I'm like talking about the portfolio composition is on this fund is this, but then it's not as amazing as my hair or something, like I try to add a little so that like people are paying attention,
Yeah. There'll be a pop quiz at the end to see what Tae's jokes were today.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And, I enjoy all of the dry humor and little jokes that you can insert in there. Thank you. And just, I'm sure you will, but just keep going. The content is great. I definitely recommend for everyone to hop over there and check you out. And thank you, Tae, for being here.
Thank you for having me.